Hi there, I'm Barbara Turley and you're watching another episode of Feminine Wealth TV, the show that uncovers the diamond tips on creating truly conscious wealth from changemakers, world shakers and wealth creators. Today I have a woman on the show who saw a need and decided that she was the one who was going to fill that need. So she became the publisher of Australia's leading opinion site, The Big Smoke. Please welcome to the show, Alex Chelios. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
So I'm really keen to explore this idea that you became the publisher of an amazing online opinion site, having had no experience really in the background doing that. Talk to me about how did The Big Smoke come about? I mean, what is The Big Smoke about?
I was sitting at a cafe with a friend and I was talking about the current opinion sites and the websites that most people are reading in Australia, and none of them really resonated with me. I felt that they were either politically too leaning on one side or the other, or I just didn't really relate to the content that they were producing. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to add an extra player and have a platform that allowed people from all walks of life? So we have a tagline, from cabbie to QC. We are the people's platform, and we allow people to come on board, give an opinion piece. They're not rants, they're usually pretty well constructed opinion pieces that allow people to articulate their views. And we publish pieces by really well-known Australians, politicians, all sorts of people.
Wow, so you're sitting at coffee one day and you decide you feel there's a need, but obviously like going from thinking I can see a gap to being the one, I'm going to put my hand up and fill that gap. Was that a scary transition for you, or how did that come about?
Well, I'm a bit of a goose in the sense that I just assume that I'd be fabulous at doing something.
I love that. You're awesome.
I can work it out. And so I did. I spent about 8 months to get from the point of an idea to actually creating it. So from launch date, from the time we started, was about an 8-month lag time. So we did have that gap period, but during that time we studied the market. We really looked at what consumers wanted, what other publishers were doing, and why we would be different. And a huge aspect of it was aesthetically, we wanted the site to look different. We wanted it to be urban. We wanted to have more of a city feel to it. And we think we've achieved that pretty well.
And tell me, so in that 8-month period when you were testing the market, because everyone says go out and test the market, a lot of people don't really know how to do that effectively though. So how did you go about that?
I think that what's great about this current climate with social media is you can really put out questions, and you can really put out to people scenarios and see how they will respond. So social media was a huge thing. Asking our social circles was another, our immediate social circles, to find out what people wanted. And over time we were able to ascertain a pretty good picture of where we could fit in. And it's one of those things where you create something, you launch it, and then it evolves as the market changes and the market speaks to you. One of the things I started doing was we didn't have a sports section. And when I first launched, I thought, this is my selling point, I'm not going to have a sports section. I'm the only Australian site that doesn't. And the market spoke and everybody wanted a sports section. So I accepted defeat. And now we have content that's sports related, not a sports section. But so it's really about evolving and having that process where we're listening to the market and then, changing directions when we have to.
Everyone I've had on the show, to be honest, that's been a really, really key thing where they've said you have to listen to your audience. And I know, again, we all say that, and I'm sort of labouring this point because it is so difficult to do. We all think that we're listening, but sometimes we're putting our own views onto what the market actually wants. So when you went out to your own circles, was this just like your own Facebook group or your own... Or were you commenting on blogs, or where were you asking the questions?
We were asking it over a number of places, and a lot of them were people we didn't know very well. They'd be friends of friends.
Okay.
So they weren't people in our immediate circles. So we did that. It's absolutely true what you say about, not putting your own opinions onto it, because I could very well just say, I hate that, it's not my style, I don't want it, but if the market wants it, the market gets it. And ultimately that's what my business is here to do, especially something like The Big Smoke, which is here to serve the community, and it's here to serve what Australians want and what they want to say. So it's very important to listen, and I think it's just about not letting that ego get in the way of what do I want as opposed to...
It's like the sports section thing. I mean, as you say, the market has spoken, that's what they want.
It is what I accept defeat. And we have actually they do really well, those pieces, but people love them. So, and we have had a few sporting satiric pieces, which I love, but we are getting more and more genuine sports pieces. They're really analysing the climate, the culture in Australia, and I think that's a very Australian thing to do. And I think on reflection that was remiss of me to launch and assume that we could take out that whole market.
And tell me, I'm always interested about when you launch something, right? It's such a stressful thing to do, right? When you're coming up to the launch date of a particular product or your new site, and you think, this is fabulous, I want everyone to love it. What was that first day like when the site sort of went live? Did you have much traffic, or did you panic, or how did that go?
We had great traffic actually. Which was really surprising, and people talked about it. But you launch, and it's a website, so you're just sitting there, and I know it's an anticlimax because it's not like having an event where 100,000 people walk through the doors. So you're really just sitting there going, I hope people like this, and I hope, and it was an interesting day, and over time it's gained momentum, and it's definitely cemented itself into our current media stream in different ways. It's permeated into other areas, and we just see ourselves as providing a platform that wasn't able to be met in other capacities, and so we just continue to grow that. We're a commercial business, so we are trying to grow, and we are trying to have expansion opportunities as they come. And the focus really is, for me personally as publisher, is to make sure we have a sustainable business model.
Absolutely.
And that was the key for me. It wasn't about just having a blog, even though people talk about that. I wanted to have something that could be here for a long time, that could be a platform for voices for many years, and
is a commercial enterprise.
And is a commercial, and
I love that you said that.
Actually serves people who can contribute to it.
Well, the only way it can keep going is if there is a business model attached to it, is a commercial enterprise. So tell me, what is the business model? The
business model is a hybrid approach on both advertising in the traditional sense, native advertising, integrated content, and we also have an e-commerce element to the site called the Bec Marketplace. The reason that came about was because I saw so many small businesses across Australia with these fabulous websites that were selling great products, but they just weren't able to be found. If you Google the right keyword, you may find them.
Yes.
But the likelihood of you beating the algorithms on Google or Facebook to find them was really difficult. So it was really about finding a platform, having them all amalgamated onto one site that people could browse. And my idea behind it's a low-cost solution. It's part of an overall multifaceted advertising campaign for them. But it just allows the reader who might be reading an article and not want to go back to work yet to browse and do a bit of shopping, and then it becomes about purchase intention and message association. So that's where that came from.
And is the shop then, do you use the content to drive the sales of the products in the shop?
Yeah, so the idea is we use the content to create a lead generation type scenario with other external parties across Australia, and we found a really good response to that. People love it. We also do a little bit of integrated content with those stores, so we might do, recently we did a Valentine's Day piece with one of our stores, and that was really well received and shared a lot, just like it would be normal content. So that's been a really positive thing. It tells me that readers actually do want to connect with new brands.
Look, what I love about you saying this is that a lot of people out there, particularly business owners in brick and mortar businesses, are struggling to understand where the content piece fits in with how you sell a product.
Yeah.
So I love that you're pairing that whole content marketing piece, online, digital Google piece, with actually selling products.
I think that's the future, and I think that's actually what people want. I also don't believe that people are so anti-commercial entities entering their space. I think it's really about having an urban ecosystem and allowing people to both read, write, engage in different capacities, and the Bec Marketplace allows people to have an extra element to that.
And tell me then about the writers, because obviously when you build platforms, yours is like a platform really, as opposed to just a blog. Where are you getting the writers from? How did you engage the writers? Do you pay them? How does that all work?
So initially we approached it with a number of different outlets for young writers, so people that were probably out of uni. But what we found is it's not just writers that write for us. It is the barrister who has something to say about new laws, or it is the shop owner who is upset about council changes. And, there's different people coming on board.
Do they come forward?
They do. They
That's
actually
fantastic.
approach. And my editor receives content every week from all sorts of places. So we advertise lightly, but it's really word of mouth. It's really about, my friend wrote that and it was fabulous and I want to write a piece. We've had a person come on board and write about what they feel the local mayor has done to a certain business aspect, and then she comes on and talks about. There's not many platforms where people can do that, and I think
not even the newspaper, because people are reading the news every day, but it's actually quite filtered by what they decide is going to go out or whatever. So this is really driven again by your
the market.
audience, by the market.
So if I want somebody to talk about, a particular political association, we will always have the opposing views, and we really do that with our politicians. So we will have both Liberal and Labor people write for us, Greens, independents, and we really nurture those relationships because we think the audience is smart enough to make up their own minds. I don't need to direct that conversation. I don't need to determine what we provide our audience. They will tell us.
You're just providing the platform on which this debate can occur.
Yeah.
And what about then deciding, do you watch, obviously I'm sure from talking to you, you're going to be watching what's resonating, like what content's doing really well.
Yeah.
And then do you decide, how do you sort of filter, if content's doing really well, how do you decide you're going to do more of that? Or how does that all work?
So we really do look at what's shared a lot and what do people respond to, what drives a lot of comments. Then there are things in the market that do really well, but that I don't think is at the right tone for the site. Yes. So there will be things that we might tweak a version of it. So it might be a really light piece, but we might approach it in a very acerbic, tongue-in-cheek or satiric way. So we really do try to differentiate ourselves as a site by our writers, but our writers do that organically because they
have their own brand
and they're funny and they're clever and they really, I feel the Big Smoke really represents Australians the way I wanted us to be represented in the media. And I think there were facets and fragments in different publishing outlets, but I think the Big Smoke brings that together.
And I'm fascinated because, this has happened pretty quickly, but you have had a really structured, you had your business model, you've got your really clear vision. Like I can see your vision is so clear for this. What did you do prior to the Big Smoke that might have driven this ability to be so strategic? Well,
I didn't come from a background of ideology where I wanted to change the world so much as I could see a gap and I could see how I could fit in and meet that. But you would have to do it within frameworks that worked.
Absolutely,
so I don't approach it in, I hope people like this. I approach it in, what does the market want? How do I pivot if I need be? So I guess that comes from having a background that was in business, and I did my master's in business, so I understood a lot of theory. But again, you don't learn.
Well, that's just theory.
That's
really.
Theory. You don't learn it until I've learned more in the last few years with the Big Smoke than I did in the years and years of my postgraduate education. Yeah. So it's kind of like, but it gives you that ability to think critically and to really have a nuanced view of what the market wants.
And obviously nothing's ever linear, right? I mean, it feels to me like this has just been this massive success and you launched, and what's been the hardest thing, do you think?
I think
this journey for you?
The hardest thing for me has been, first of all, from a funding point of view, I find that within Australia we've got such a small pool of VCs, for example, and investors. So the hardest thing for me has been able to secure, and we've had a little bit of external investment into the company, of private equity and all sorts of things, and we've had really great people get involved with the company. But I see a lot of companies get huge funding or huge capital injections, and they haven't proven their business model the way we have, or they haven't got the engaged audience that we have. And so I feel that because of the connotation that it's publishing and media, that maybe people don't take it as seriously as a long-term strategy.
Absolutely, because they're thinking magazines, online newspapers,
it's a dying industry.
Business model is really it's like a vertically integrated sort of publisher coming into e-commerce.
Yeah, I really see this as a hybrid approach, and I really see this that while I have to battle in a different way than maybe other startups do, it's been a very rewarding process because it's allowed me to really get out there, and it's kind of that whole idea of you're proving yourself every day, and the company proves itself every day. And we've been fortunate; we've ticked off a number of really strong milestones, and I just think we've got a really bright future ahead of us. And I'm happy to drive that, and I'm proud to drive that.
And what about? So tell me about the investors. I'm really interested because it's not many people we get on the show that are talking about capital raisings and stuff like that. I mean, that's kind of my background, but. What kinds of investors are you looking for? Because obviously there's the money element, but you obviously want somebody who it'd be great if somebody had expertise that they could bring to this business as well.
Yeah, look,
what are you looking for?
I think that I've got a really good advisory board, for example, and I've got people that have a really strong publishing background, a really strong digital background, and a really strong media background. So I've got people with me steering the ship. And I've been very fortunate with that. In terms of investors, I think what's really important is somebody that is able to see a vision expand and rather look at a snapshot, and also not look for I want to put $1 million in and make $15 million in the next 12 months. I think it's about being realistic and sustainable for the company, not so much about the ROI for the investor.
And also being on board with the vision, seeing that vision and being
absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
And when you do what I do, it's really important to be constantly flexible, and you're constantly pivoting, you're constantly changing, and if you don't have somebody that is on board with that, or you have somebody that's unable to be
flexible or see that the need for that, then there can be a real block.
It's a really bad relationship. So I'm very careful about who I allow into the company, and I'm also very careful about who I would put my company's future in the hands of.
Because they start to have a say, and they want. I know they have to be on board with the whole vision. I always say that you have to have somebody that really believes in the vision as much as you do.
Exactly.
And tell me about your advisory board. I love that you have an advisory board. So many businesses don't have one, and that's fabulous that you have gone that route. Talk to me about how you chose those people. How did you develop the board? Do you pay them, or do they just mentor in? They
have equity in the business,
right? Okay.
And they meet on a semi-regular basis. I'm a completely transparent, director. I warts and all. I just want to do what's best for the company, so I don't really feel any need to hide anything. And because they've all got different backgrounds that really do mix into the different facets of the business, they all complement in different ways. So we meet regularly, we talk regularly, and they all have brought so much value to the company. How I found them was, one of them is somebody I've just known for a very long time. The other person was introduced to me. So it became a very organic process. It wasn't something that I sought so much.
So you didn't decide, right, I need these 3 people,
no,
and I'm going to find them.
But I knew these 3 people, and I knew they needed to be involved with this company. And I saw how their careers have been. I've seen how they've led companies, and I thought I need them to be involved in this.
I love as well the fact that there's no ego with anything that you're doing, because you've recognized where your skills are and where you need to bring in skills and what the company needs as opposed to what you need as a person. So often as entrepreneurs we sort of think about ourselves,
which is the juxtaposition, because I'm so I'm fabulous, aren't I? And then here I am trying. Look, I think that really at the end of the day, what's important is that this company has the best future possible, and it's really irrelevant how I feel.
And then when it came to giving equity to the advisory board, how did you make that decision about how much equity to give them? Because a lot of people would have that question. They'd say, well, if I'm going to give away some of my company, how do I price that? How do I know? How did you get around that?
So it was about the value that I believe that they would bring to the company. I would rather own a little bit less of a company that was doing really well than a whole bunch of a company that was doing all mine, but just has an ABN number and that's it. So it was really making a discerning decision over the people I knew, the capabilities that they had, and what value it would bring. And it's about quantifying that. And being able to quantify that. And I think that's one of the biggest problems founders have, is they've got a very limited view on what something is worth, and they maybe underestimate the value of a person with 20 years of experience in your field. You may have the passion, the vision, and the ability to execute, but you don't have all the technical abilities or the skills or the introductions that you can make.
The introductions is the distribution channels is the big one. So tell me the future vision for the Big Smoke. Where are you taking this? What's the big vision?
So I see the Big Smoke as becoming a part of Australian culture, in the sense that we see Australians regularly use it as a platform. I see it being the one-stop shop for people from a browsing shopping point of view. I really see it as being its standalone ecosystem online.
And the space that it's in, do you see people, when you say standalone platform for the shopping experience, that covers it, that's very broad. So what kinds of products or what areas?
Small businesses. So it's all about the small brands. It's all about the people that can't afford these $5,000 a month budget campaigns. It's not for those people. It's for the people that want to reach a niche audience, that want to have an engaged audience, and that want to see a way to have their presence online without a huge financial layout. So that's what the buck is. But I also have other plans, and I am expanding into the US later in this year. I've got a fabulous editor who's taking over the US version of it, and I just we see writers already coming from the US wanting to be involved. I think what has happened is people have realized that, why am I reading and I know people are going to hate me saying this, but why am I reading a piece by a journalist who is just sitting in a room pumping out content when I've lived that industry? or I'm an expert in that
Absolutely,
place. So I think it's about giving them the microphone and saying, let's have a listen to what they've got to say.
Yeah, rather than just journalists who are researching something and giving their angle.
Yeah, and there's relevance and there's value in all of that, but I think that there's also value in shifting the focus into people that are on the ground. So whatever field that might be, whether they are a politician or whether they are a barrister or whether they are a chef or whatever industry they're in, they've got something to impart into what the discussion is around that topic.
Around their industry and the hot topics going on in their industry. I absolutely love that. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. I love the fact that you came on the show, and I'm just so impressed with the way that you've structured this and the strategy behind it, and I can really see this is going to be absolutely epic. So obviously if people want to connect with you or they want to find out more about the Big Smoke, where should they go? What's the
thebigsmoke.com.au, and we've got all our social media avenues on there, and you can connect, and we have about 3 or 4 exclusive pieces of content per day, so we're quite an active site. And we really do encourage people to jump on board. There'll be pieces people hate, but there'll also be people that will go on and actually argue an article and in the comments,
so you can really get involved in the conversation.
And then you can submit an article and say, hey, I really hated that article that guy wrote, and actually I'm a doctor and I think he's wrong in that, and then they'll write up content
for
us. And we have that happen all the time.
Yeah, so if people want to get involved, they can actually submit their article and get their voice heard.
Yeah.
I love it. Listen, Alex, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a really, really great interview, and I'm going to be following you a lot over the next little while, I can tell.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And thank you for joining me again for another week. And remember, you can catch me later this week on my podcast, Wealth Unplugged, where I'm going to be giving you my 3 key takeouts from my chat with Alex today. And I can already tell they're going to be really, really powerful. So jump on there. Until next week, have a great week. See you then.